Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Wednesday, September 4th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about what we've been up to at the water cooler. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta. And joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And Writer Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
So Chris is away. He is traveling to Toronto, to Canada for the Toronto International Film Festival. So he will be missed, but he will return not next week, but the week after, I think.
I think he's back next week for at least a few days.
Yeah.
But him and our team on ground Toronto will be turning in reviews starting tomorrow. So please watch the site. You'll be seeing reviews for Joker and for Jojo Rabbit and a bunch of other movies we're excited to see.
Yeah, and once he returns, we'll get him on the podcast to talk about all that, which will be exciting. I am flying to Florida tonight. I'm going to cover the Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando, which is something I've never done before. I've never been there. I've always been going to the Hollywood version, and I've heard, like, everything in Orlando, it's bigger and better. So so I'm excited to check that out, but I will be gone for the next couple episodes. And it looks like I just missed Hurricane Dorian, which is good, because I was kind of worried for a second there. Like, for a few days, it looked like I was flying right when the hurricane was going to happen, and I was fearing, I mean, I guess it's bad taste, but I was fearing my flight was going to be canceled, which is in bad taste because, you know, there's a lot worse things happening because of this hurricane. But anyways, let's jump into what we've been doing. Let's move on to what we've been doing. Yesterday I went to speaking of Halloween Horror Nights, I went to Universal Studios Hollywood, and I got a behind the scenes tour of a couple of the mazes, a couple of the big mazes, Ghostbusters and a maze based on Jordan Peele's Us. And I've never done this before. I've actually usually turned down the invites to these early press previews because I want to experience the maze like on opening night with, you know, actual scare actors and the lighting. And this is like, you're going into these mazes. Like, if you've never been to a Halloween Horror Nights, basically, if you know, they do this event for like a month and a half before Halloween, and they build these mazes from the ground up. So they're built, you know, by Hollywood prop decorators and stuff like that. Like, but they're built in places that there were parking lots, places that there was nothing. So these are things that are like going to be a fully formed set and walkthrough experience that didn't exist a few months ago. So it's insane that they're able to put all this together in such a short period of time, and getting to see them during the day is kind of you lose some of the magic because you aren't seeing them in the proper, you know, lighting. You're not getting the music. You're not getting the vibe. You don't have the scare actors. Like, you get to see it with the lights on, which is, I guess, the equivalent of seeing like a nightclub with the lights on. It's kind of a little bit more scary in a different direction. But I do want to report that the Ghostbusters maze looks incredible. I did a report on the site, which you can read. I'll link it in the show notes. They basically are, Brad, I wish you could go to this because they're taking you through the first Ghostbusters. You enter through the firehouse. You go through, you know, the lobby of the firehouse. You go into the containment unit, and like, they actually, it's interesting because they are not only adapting that first movie, but they're actually taking elements from the original Dan Aykroyd screenplay. Like, I guess in the original screenplay. Have you ever read the original screenplay, Brad?
No, I haven't actually read the screenplay.
Well, apparently in the original draft, they had a camera inside the containment unit so they could see the ghosts inside the containment unit. And like, they're using that idea that we'll actually get to see what's happening inside the containment unit with like the ghosts like playing poker with each other and stuff like that. So there's
That's
couple,
cool.
Yeah, it seems like they're fans that are really trying to take advantage of this. And there's a lot of, I think Jacob would appreciate what they're doing with like kind of effects and illusions. Like, they're using a Pepper's ghost effect to turn the librarian that tells you to shush into the beastly monster that she becomes, which is kind of like this effect that they use in the Haunted Mansion. I do a whole write-up about all of this, and you can also read about Jordan Peele's Us Maze. I also have photos. They allowed me to take photos in the Ghostbusters part, so if you want to see what Slimer looks like, he'll actually be, coming down the hallway at you in this maze, which is actually kind of exciting. Check out that report for all that. I've also been playing a lot with my new camera. I think I mentioned last week or the week before on the podcast that I got the Sony A6400. This was a camera that was recommended to me by a lot of people, including David Chen. He has the 6500, and we have been trying to find a good vlogging camera, and I've been using this. I've done 2 vlogs that are now up on the Ordinary Adventures channel with this camera, and it looks fantastic. It is a lot more work over like the Canon G7X Mark II that I was using, which was kind of this point and shoot that was very versatile. This does not have stabilization and is a little bit harder to deal with in real conditions. So I'm wondering how practical it is, but I'm loving it so far. So we'll see, because I'm going to bring this to Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando and shoot some video about that and some other stuff. So look forward to that. But I've been doing like all the YouTube videos, watching YouTube videos and learning how to, use this camera and shoot things properly and stuff like that. So that's what I've been enveloped in, not really watching a lot of stuff. Jacob, what have you been up to?
I had a very uneventful Labor Day, just hanging out with family and friends, but as of today, I can talk about a trip I did months ago, earlier this year, to the set of Creepshow, the new Shudder-produced streaming TV show based in the 1982 George Romero film. And Peter, this was a crazy set visit. You know how on most set visits you are put in a room and they take you out and they sort of guide you very carefully from, set piece to set piece, and then take you back in the room, and sort of it's very much a rehearsed experience.
Yeah, it's become more of kind of like a junket on set. It's not really you used to actually go and watch them film stuff, and now it's kind of like just a series of interviews.
That's what we were able to do on this set, Peter. It was very much hey, come hang out and watch filming for hours if you want to. Come hang out and chat with whoever you like. Oh, look, there's Tom Savini, legendary makeup artist. Let's call him over this table and have him sit down for an hour with you guys just to bullshit. And it was one of the most fun set visits I've ever had, and they even said, take out your phones, take personal photos. Don't post them. We trust you. It was that kind of set visit.
Wow.
And the trust went both ways. And
Jacob, I think I've gone on, over the last 15 years, maybe like 50, 60 set visits. I don't think that's ever happened to me, where they're like, sure, you can take photos.
Yeah, so my phone's like full of all these amazing Creepshow set photos. They will let us take pictures of the monitors while they were filming. I mean, of course, none of us posted any of this. We didn't share it, so it was a really good idea of Shudder, which is owned by AMC, the horror streaming service Shudder. They, trusted us to be good and be journalists, and we were good and we were journalists, and we ended up just having a really positive time. I mean, that's a really great set. I wrote a lot of articles about this set visit that are going up in Slashdome throughout the day, but the series is executive produced by Greg Nicotero, who visited the set of the original Creepshow movie in 1982, and then was hired by George Romero and Tom Savini to be a makeup artist on Day of the Dead in 1985. He founded K&B, the legendary makeup effects studio, later in the 80s. He's now an executive producer in The Walking Dead, and he pretty much has used his Walking Dead power and his decades of influence in horror to get Creepshow made as a streaming series where each episode is going to be 2 stories, each one by a different director. They're all going to be in the same style as the original movie, sort of a comic book inspired, grisly, tongue-in-cheek horror story. We were there for Rob Schraub. He's a veteran TV director and comic book artist. Was filming a short called Bad Wolf Down about Jeffrey Combs from Reanimator fame playing a Nazi commander who surrounded a group of Americans, but it's the full moon and the Americans are all werewolves. So it's a werewolves versus Nazi horror short. We have to watch them film that. And we were able to interview Tom Savini, who's directing a Joe Hill script for his short. And we talked a lot to Greg Nicotero. And all this is online. We'll be on Slashdome throughout the day. And we learned so much. Like, they're filming each segment in less than 4 days. They're keeping everything really fast and loose. They're reusing tons of sets. Like, each set is like so covered in blood, they just strip it down, rebuild on top of it to build the next set for the next episode. And we have to wander around all these sets, through all the various monster closets where they have like tons of monsters and bodies from previous episodes just tossed in the corner, just get them out of the way. It was wild. And the thing I appreciate the most is the set visits are always so sanitized. They always try to keep you away from the actual filmmaking process so they can you write the nicest thing possible. But we were watching them film for so long that at one point Rob Schraub, the director, and Greg Nicotero, the executive producer, had a straight up near argument because we were watching a scene where a werewolf rips a guy's head off, and Greg Nicotero insisted that they shoot one dry take without a blood squirt in case something goes wrong with the blood pump, in case they ruin the set or the costume and they have to add digital blood. Whereas Rob Schraub said, no, we're doing this practically. I do not want digital blood in my short. And they had a straight up argument in front of the press about whether or not they should do 2 takes or 1 take. And it was fascinating to watch because you know these arguments happen on sets all the time, but you never get to see them as visiting press. And ultimately, Nicotero got his wish. They did a dry take with the head was removed without blood, and they did the take with the blood squirt, and the blood squirt worked perfectly. So it's probably the version we'll see in the final cut. But yeah, I read about all this in the set visit, and it really made me appreciate, filmmaking even more than knowing that this was not everybody constantly getting along, and that creative people were butting heads and having discussions and arguments. Makes me want to see Creepshow more because it's a work of passion, not a work of everybody on the same page at all times. So that's all coming up today. Creepshow premieres later this month on Shudder, and I'm excited for it. This set visit had a lot of really gnarly cool stuff.
Okay, so look forward to his coverage on the site. We'll link it in the show notes. Ben, you've been traveling?
Yeah, my wife and I went to Portland, Oregon, where we had never been before, and we spent Labor Day weekend there, and it was really great. We got stranded in an airport in Orlando, I think it was last year, overnight, and the airline essentially gave us like vouchers to make up for it, like, hey, take a free flight on us, and so we used those tickets because they were about to expire to go to Portland. And part of the reason we went was because we'd never been to Portland and it seemed really cool, and we know that it had like really some of the best food in the country, but another big reason was because our favorite band, the Midnight, this synthwave band that I've talked about on the podcast before, was playing a show there on Thursday night. So we went and saw them play. So that was pretty amazing. And then, just got to like explore the city, and went to Powell's City of Books, which is like one of the world's biggest bookstores, and ate all sorts of great food and all of that stuff. So Portland, I'd recommend it.
What is the best food you ate in Portland?
I'm saving that, Peter. I'm saving that for the what we've been eating section.
Okay. HT, what have you been up to?
So my mom visited me in New York this weekend, and we walked around and went around for a little bit, and she took me to see Phantom of the Opera, which I'd actually never seen on stage before. I'd seen the 2005 movie, I think, directed by Joel Schumacher, and I will admit, this is a movie that I really enjoyed as a kid, and 2004, I'm sorry. And I don't know if I would go back now and enjoy it as much, but I did really enjoy seeing the stage show, particularly because all of the singers were obviously classically trained. This is, a story about an opera house based on the novel by Gaston Leroux, and the musical is by Andrew Lloyd Webber, but seeing it on stage with people who are actually classically trained and singing in voices that were more suited to the opera versus the movie where it's a bit more poppy was really cool to experience. And yes, I did get to see the chandelier crash, although not that well because it was kind of obscured from my view for a lot of it. So it was just kind of let down slowly from where I saw, but it was still cool to see. And I really enjoyed just watching that and seeing that whole production, and just hearing like all the classically trained operatic singers, and even the ballet dancers who were professionally trained too. So I was just really impressed by the entire performance. So that was cool to see. And my mom also stocked up some food for me because I have an Instant Pot, and she made a few dishes for me in the Instant Pot. I guess I'll save it for the food section too, because I never been in the food section. Might as well share a couple of Vietnamese recipes.
Yeah, HT. We'll see you again in the food section.
All right.
Okay, let's move on to what we've been reading. The section that should be called Jacob's section. Jacob, what have you been reading?
I'm actually, first of all, I know people hate talking about. I know when people sometimes hate when talk about theme parks too much, but I've been reading 2 theme park related books, so I'll move quickly. The first one was a gift from Peter for my birthday, and that is Taschen, the really nice book publisher who makes really great luxury coffee table books. They made a book called Walt Disney's Disneyland, and it's just a massive, oversized hardcover coffee table book about the history of that park, and it is a gorgeous thing. The photographs are amazing. Like the color photographs from the 1950s, like of Disneyland that I'll never get to see back before people had cameras all the time. Like it's incredible. Like I know I've been to Disneyland proper, the California park, since I was a small child. But thanks to YouTube, I feel like I've been there. I feel like I can get around it pretty easily. But the park in the 50s and 60s was so different, and the photographs alone make this a must-own for theme park fans. But the writing is also really good and full of great information. So many amazing behind-the-scenes photos. So thank you, Peter. I'm really enjoying this book.
Yeah, Taschen had a booth at D23 Expo, and I saw that book, and I was like flipping through it, and I spent like probably a good like 15 minutes like flipping through it, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get this for Jacob for his birthday. So and what was the other book you read?
The other book is it just arrived last night, so I've barely looked through it. But is Mark Davis in his own words, Imaginary Disney Theme Parks. This is from authors Pete Docter and Christopher Merritt. Pete Docter, you may know, is the Pixar filmmaker who directed Inside Out, Up, Monsters, Inc., and he currently actually runs Pixar. And Mark Davis is probably one of the most influential artists of the 20th century that most people aren't really aware of. I talked about on the podcast before, but he was a Disney animator who was recruited by Walt Disney to design characters and buildings and rides for Disneyland. And his work his fingerprints are all over Disney theme parks, to the point where when you imagine a Disney theme park in your head, when you imagine what a ride looks like, what a Disney theme park character looks like, that's not a Disney character. It's probably a Mark Davis character. And even rides that he didn't directly design, like he designed Parts of the Caribbean or characters for it, character for Haunted Mansion, so many of like the buildings and scenarios and scenes for those rides. And he did not design Splash Mountain, but that ride incorporates many of characters that he did design from a previous attraction, and the characters who were added to it are clearly based in his work. So Mark Davis is this guy who is more Disney than Disney, because when you think of Disney, there's a very strong chance you may be thinking of Mark Davis. This book is a massive hardcover. It's a 2-volume thing. It retails for $150. It's cheaper on Amazon. But it is a hefty book. You're getting a lot of book for that price. And Peter, I know it's an expensive buy, but this is something I would really recommend to you for just the photographs and the art and the history alone.
Oh, I'm going to have to check this out. And this isn't the first time Pete Docter has been writing stuff. I think he wrote a book about the 9 Old Men or something. Or maybe it was a series of flip books or something. But he's been, I don't know how he finds the time. He's directing his own movie. He's running Pixar. And he's helping author books.
I know they announced this book 2 years ago at D23, our previous D23.
Yeah.
So he's been working on it for some time, and you can see the work. I mean, there's 1,300 pieces of Mark Davis art in this, and it's so much fun to see. They have the rough sketches from iconic Jungle Cruise scene to a photograph of it being constructed with him on set, helping them finish it, to a photograph of the finished version. So it's just so much theme park nerdery, Peter. So much. You'll enjoy that stuff.
Okay, I might have to check this out then.
Jacob, I have a question actually. Would
Sure.
someone who's not that invested and interested in theme parks be interested in this if they just want to learn about the history of Disney animation? Because I was really fascinated by what you were saying about him kind of helping to form that iconic Disney house style.
His style he's back half of his career is mostly theme parks, and even though he wasn't animated before that. But I would Google Mark Davis art, and if you like what you see, I would look for a good deal on this, because if you look at his art and say, yes, this appeals to me, I think you'll find a lot here, because even though he is more theme park than animation, there is so much of his work reflected throughout all of Disney at this point.
Yeah,
Cool.
he's very influential. Okay, let's move on to what we've been watching. I got to see an early screening of Todd Phillips' Joker. This is a film that just premiered at the Venice Film Festival. It's going to be showing at Toronto. Chris is excited to see it, so we will hear from him next week on this. But guys, this is a very good movie. It is a character piece. It is It is bold. It is not what we expect from a superhero movie. I mean, I guess it's not a superhero movie, but a comic book adaptation. Joaquin Phoenix's performance is amazing. It's a award-worthy performance. The score is great. I don't really want to say too much about this film because it's something I want to have a spoiler discussion about because there's so much to dive in and dissect. There's some interesting twists and turns that makes me want to see it a second time, if that means anything. But I will say that and the statement got a little controversial when I said it on Twitter on my tweet, but I am a little bit worried on how certain people might take the messages of this movie. And that's not to say that this movie shouldn't be made. This movie, I guess this movie has one downfall. I'll say this. It doesn't have really a message, or its message is very muddled. And I think because of that, because you're empathizing with this insane mass murderer, it could, by the wrong people, be taken in the wrong ways and almost being used as an anthem of sorts. Kind of, I guess, how people relate to Tyler Durden and Fight Club in ways. But this, I think, is different because there's no morality in this. There's no Jack, there's no Batman. We'll talk about this later. I don't want to go down that path. I don't think that makes this movie any. It's not a criticism of this movie, but it's definitely something. While I was watching this movie, that I kept on thinking about and a little bit worrying about. But I'm excited to dive into this and talk with you guys once you see Todd Phillips' Joker. But definitely put this on your radar. It definitely feels like if Martin Scorsese made a Joker movie in like the 1970s or early 80s. Like, it really does feel like that. And what else have I been watching? Oh yeah, I've been watching. I watched the first half of Glow season 3. Glow is one of my favorite shows on Netflix. I used to be a hardcore pro wrestling fan. I never watched actually the original Glow, the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, but this series is so good. It's I think I like it more when it's being a drama than it is being a comedy. But the first 2 seasons are some of my favorite Netflix seasons. I will say this: I've only watched the first half of Glow season 3, and I feel like they've moved. This season moves to Vegas, and it focuses more on the characters, which I guess should be a good thing. But to me, I want more of the wrestling, and without the wrestling, I feel like it's a little bit slower than it has been. Ben, I know that you've only watched the first few episodes. What are you thinking of Glow season 3?
Yeah, I think there's 10 episodes in season 3. My wife and I finished the first 4, and last night we were like looking for something to watch, and I remember that we were watching Glow, and we both sort of looked at each other and maybe decided that we were just going to stop watching it. And that's after really enjoying the first 2 seasons. And I think it's the same thing that you're feeling. Like, it feels like the propulsiveness is gone, and it was never like a super propulsive show, but it felt like it had a drive to it in the first 2 seasons that is completely missing now. And it seems like, at least over the first 4 episodes of season 3, that it's just spinning its wheels again. And there, I just talked about like Dear White People season 3 and Handmaid's Tale season 3 on, I think, last week's episode of The Water Cooler. And it's like, what is happening in the 3rd season of these shows where, I don't know, it's just like everything sort of slows down so much. And yeah, I agree with you, Peter. I feel like, in theory, the idea of turning inward and focusing on the characters sounds good, but in practice, I don't know, it's definitely missing something for me.
Yeah, I feel like the wrestling show gave them all motivation to, it was one of those shows where it's about a bunch of people getting together and putting on a show. Do you know what I mean? And for that show to succeed meant a lot for all of those people. And I feel like in this season, it's kind of, that show doesn't even matter anymore.
Yeah. And there was also like a ticking clock element to it. Like, oh, we have to do this by this time, and we have to get ready by this time. And we have to, create this thing out of nothing, basically. And so there was like a sense that, of stakes that I just don't feel in the first 4 episodes. And again, maybe something drastic happens in the back half of the season, but for me, I don't know, for 4 hours or however long it was. I don't even remember if this is actually a half-hour show or a full hour anymore. But it just wasn't enough to keep me going. I think it kind of sapped all of my love for what I had come to enjoy in the first 2 seasons.
I feel like I need to complete the season to just see what happens, but this might be the end of Glow for me, but I don't know. We'll see. Jacob, what have you been watching?
Oh, I was traveling mostly over Labor Day weekend, so I didn't get a chance to watch much, but I did watch the first episode of Amazon's Carnival Row, their much-hyped, lavishly produced fantasy series. It was originally a screenplay by Travis Beacham, who wrote Pacific Rim, and it's now, years later, after it was on the blacklist and after it was celebrated, has become an 8-episode TV show with season 2 on the way. And it is a show set in this Victorian England-inspired fantasy world where elves and other fantastical creatures are immigrants to this very English world, and they live in the slums of the city, an area called Carnival Row. And Orlando Bloom plays a human detective investigating a series of crimes against, the Fae and other fairy folk. And Cara how do you pronounce her name, HT? I know you can.
I think it's just Delevingne.
Cara Delevingne plays a fairy from a recently arrived fairy immigrant who knew him from their time in a war overseas. And it's just blend of fantasy, noir, and political conspiring, and gory violence, and Game of Thrones-esque sex scenes. It's a lot of things. It is a lot of things going on here. And the first episode, I'm not completely sold yet after the first episode. I like a lot of pieces. I am going to watch the rest of season 1 for sure. My wife is very much even more on board than I am. This very much feels like, I feel like it's shooting for both Game of Thrones fans and Outlander fans. Watching the cross section of those fan bases, and it's maybe a little bit of Lord of the Rings sprinkled in there as well. It's almost like if Lord of the Rings, had its own industrial revolution, it would look like this world. And yeah, it is a very interesting thing, a very cool world. It has some clunky pilot things where it's trying to introduce a lot of ideas and characters in 1 hour. But Carnival Row, it's a good start. It is a solid start. I'm excited to watch more this week. Has anybody else watched this yet?
Sounds like not. I will say this, Jacob. There's so much stuff on TV right now, and I've just been so busy. I feel like I'm missing out on so many great shows that are going on. Yeah,
right now Carnival Row does not feel like musty. Like, I'm not like actively shouting from the rooftops, you must watch the show, like I will Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, and when I first saw that, and like I will with another Amazon show that's coming later this month, which I'll talk about soon enough. But if what I described sounds appealing, you'll probably like this show. It is very much made for you if what I described sounds like your kind of thing. Speaking of shows set in the English or English-inspired worlds, Great British Baking Show is back, and as discussed in the podcast, I believe, they're doing weekly releases of the episodes as opposed to dumping them all at once this season. And guys, this show is still so lovely, and we've talked about this show so many times, so I don't want to linger too much, but it's the kind of show where, in an American reality show, when somebody is failing, it'll be a dramatic music sting, and it cuts to a close-up of somebody else, like looking angry or happy after failing. And on Great British Baking Show, when a character succeeds, there's a close-up on their face, and they're smiling, and the focus shifts to the person behind them, and they're smiling too. Or if somebody does poorly, and they look sad and dejected, and the focus will shift quietly to the person behind them, and they look sad and dejected with them. It's so different from American reality TV shows, where instead of emphasizing the conflict, it emphasizes how everyone's in this together. And it is still the best, chill out, relaxing show out there. And I think I may enjoy it more not binging it. I can space it out and let it come each week into my home, make me feel better for an hour, then go about my life again.
I feel like for all the shows to not have bingeable, like, it doesn't seem like the show to do that with. Like, I feel like I would want to binge watch the Great British Baking Show.
Maybe, I don't know. Like, I've binged all the others, but I feel like I would binge them in two or three sessions. I'd sit down and just watch 4 episodes in a row, and it'll be gone in a day. Whereas this way I can live with it for 10 weeks. To me that feels a bit more special. I know we've had this conversation on the podcast before, and I personally am more for spreading out TV and not letting it pile up because it's all there at once. But that's my personal preference.
Yeah, I listened to your podcast last week about, I think, or was it last week or was it yesterday? It was yesterday, and you guys were saying that you would like more room to breathe. with these episodes and stuff like that. And I feel that way too. And I'm hoping Netflix could come around to this, because it seems like the only reason they did this was to make a bold statement and being like, we're different and we're giving the people what they want. They want it all right away, so we're giving it to them. But I feel like as a culture, it's hurting us. But anyways, okay. Brad, what have you been watching?
So I've been playing a little bit catch up because I got extremely busy once my girlfriend moved out here, and I kind of just never had the energy to go out of my house to see movies, especially since there wasn't a lot that was like really demanding my attention, even though there was stuff that I wanted to see just for myself to see how it was. So I finally got around to seeing Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I feel like there hasn't been a movie like this made for a PG-13 audience that works so well in a long time. If I had seen this movie when I was a kid, I would have flipped for it. It has, I like the through line that connects the various stories that come from the original anthology book that became so, famous when I was younger. I think that the representations of the monsters in live action are extremely well done. You can tell that they took as much time and care as they could to make them look just like the creepy drawings in the books. And even though, like you guys have talked about before, the message and the thematic elements here with the constant references and showcasing of, what's going on with Vietnam and Richard Nixon and all that stuff are pretty obvious. I still really enjoy that the movie is trying to do something like that for an audience that may not necessarily be accustomed to getting those kinds of details from movies. And I think that it's such a great gateway for a lot of teens who will see this movie and suddenly become big horror fans and hopefully seek out other, scary stories that are similar to this.
Cool. And what else have you been watching? You finally saw Lion King?
I did. And you know what? It's definitely there. It's a thing. I didn't dislike it, but it just adheres so close to the original, and it just reminds you so much that the original exists and is better that I there's so many things that I couldn't get past. It's just, for a movie that has such stunning visual effects, and I mean, like, I was crazy impressed by how good the visual effects here. The animals look unbelievably real. Even the landscape shots look outstanding, but the movie was just made to look so boring. And I've heard some of the producers and Favreau and stuff talk about wanting to make this feel like a nature documentary, but even nature documentaries have much more interesting camera work than this movie does. It feels like that they just created these virtual environments and kind of vaguely moved around in them with just very basic fundamental camera movements, and did nothing to really make it stand out in a bold, vibrant way. And I think that's what they needed to do to make this work. And I'm also not a fan of some of the voice casting here. I think Beyonce is awful in this movie. I don't think that she brings any emotion to the role. There's one particular line where towards the end of the movie where she says tells the lionesses to attack, and it's just so heartless and boring. And I was just really disappointed by some of the voice acting here. And I was further reminded of this because the Addams Family trailer played before it too, and I am so frustrated with Charlize Theron's work as Morticia because it sounds like she's phoning it in, and I'm just getting sick of so many voice roles going to actors just because they're big names instead of getting the best voice actors possible to do these roles. The Lion King was just another piece of that frustration.
I don't know. I do disagree with you. I think The Lion King looks good, but I don't understand why it's so soulless, because it is such a remake. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of was it Gus Van Sant who did a shot-by-shot remake of Psycho?
Yes.
And Psycho is black and white and it feels old, whatever. And Gus Van Sant recreating it with modern technology, or at the time modern technology, and giving it more color and whatever. Theoretically, it should be a better movie, right? Like, in theory, it's an update and like it with better technology and whatnot. But for some reason, that is also soulless. Jacob, maybe you can bring some perspective here. Like, why?
Why indeed? I know the popular theory with the Gus Van Sant Psycho remake is that he treated it as an experiment to see if a shot-for-shot recreation can contain the power of the original film, which, knowing his experimental career outside of that, makes sense. So I think for Gus Van Sant, it's like mimicking Psycho like that as an oddity, as an experiment, as a playground for him to, try to fit in Hitchcock's shoes and see if it's possible. That makes sense to me from that perspective, if not a commercial one. Whereas Lion King, I still can't quite understand. I still haven't seen it. I'm not excited to see it. When it's available to rent, I will pay my $5.99 on Amazon to rent it.
I think you actually just hit the nail on the head, though. I think Favreau himself is very much into experimentation and pushing the boundaries of technology, and I think that may be, bottom line, the reason why he made this movie, just to be able to, push this tech forward with Disney's paycheck behind him.
I want to say, as someone who also hasn't seen The Lion King yet and doesn't plan to see it in theaters, that better technology doesn't always mean better experience overall, because I think the photorealism of this film really hinders that soul and that life and vibrancy that you get from the original animated film. The medium of animation itself allows for so much more expressionism and things that you can take, and caricaturing, not just that, but something that you can, take more liberties with. I think there was a really great side-by-side comparison of the Hakuna Matata scenes from the animated film and the new Jon Favreau film. And with the animated film, there's just so many colors, and the blocking is so fantastic and all over the place, and it's so exciting just to watch. It looks like a painting in some ways, whereas the Jon Favreau version, they're just kind of just walking the entire time, and the colors are just so washed out.
It's the same thing with
looks like.
It's the same thing with the I Just Can't Wait to Be King musical sequence too, which I actually think works a little bit better than Hakuna Matata in this movie. But because the animals are portrayed so realistically, they can't do what they do in what is a very big, broad, almost Broadway-style musical sequence in the original animated Lion King. So it's really just Nala and Simba trotting around the water hole as all these other animals create distractions to keep Zazu away from finding them. And granted, there was a nice little touch of having a bunch of baby animals, helping them out and being their friends. That was kind of adorable and whatnot, seeing a baby rhino and a hippo, trotting around and everything. But it removes so much of the excitement and the passion and the flair from the original Lion King. And HT is right too. The facial expressions alone, you can't make one of these characters smile or frown or have an expression of worry or anything like that. And so it just feels like it lacks any life whatsoever.
Yeah, or dance, or, I don't know, I guess that's probably, yeah. And Brad, with Downton Abbey coming out, they're coming out with a movie. You finally decided to step your feet into the TV show?
Yes, so my girlfriend is a big Downton Abbey fan. She wants to see the movie when it comes out on September 20th, and she's been wanting me to watch it for a little while, so finally took a dive over the weekend and watched the first episode, and I really liked it. It's definitely a slower, very British show. There are a lot of characters to take note of and keep track of, but I do like it. I love the dry British snark. I like how warm some of the characters be. I like how some of catty the characters are. And I don't know if it was meant to be like a reveal at the time, because I don't think Dan Stevens was necessarily like a famous person at this point, but I knew Dan Stevens was in the series, so when they were waiting to introduce the person who's supposed to be inheriting the estate and whatnot, I was like, oh, this is going to be Dan Stevens. And my girlfriend was almost a little bit frustrated. She's like, you looked something up about this. I was like, he's the only cast member they haven't introduced yet. Of course it has to be him. So it's I'm interested to see where the show goes. I think I have enough time to pack the whole series in before the movie comes. I probably have to watch 2 or 3 episodes a day between now and then, but I think I can pull it off.
Is anyone else here a big fan of Downton Abbey?
I've never seen it.
See, I tried watching the first episode. It's totally the definition of a show, not for me. I'm surprised, HT, I'm surprised you're not a fan of Downton Abbey, because you seem to like the kind of period stuff.
For some reason, I like period dramas in movies, but I can't really get interested in a period drama in a series. I don't know why. It's just too much of an investment for me, I guess. But yeah, I've never seen it.
I feel like, to me, Downton Abbey is one of those shows I like to call a discovery show, where I feel like there's these certain shows that are usually they're kind of British shows, or like they're, you know, streaming shows that, I don't know, I don't have other examples of this, but people feel like they discovered it and then they like make a buzz about it to their friends. And I feel like Downton Abbey was one of those shows where everybody felt not just a relation, not just that they liked the show, but almost that they were responsible in helping it grow because they discovered it. I don't know. At least judging by my Twitter feeds and stuff at the time when that came out, it definitely felt like people like took it more personally than just an average show.
I wonder if it's because it was on PBS in the US, and that's not a frequently, you know, the channel for the best primetime cable.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you also see this with some Netflix shows, like Making a Murderer. I feel like was one of those ones that people like discovered. It wasn't like there was like a ton of buzz before it came out, or that it was a high profile show, you know. But once you have that relationship to that show, like you almost feel like you're some way connected with it, I think. But maybe that's just me projecting here because I didn't like the show. But Ben, what have you been watching?
So I watched My Neighbor Totoro for the first time. This is Hayao Miyazaki's movie from 1988, and I've been like slowly, very, very slowly making my way through the Miyazaki canon. I enjoyed Spirited Away. I really, really loved Castle of Cagliostro, and this one I think I'm like somewhere in the middle. Like I enjoyed it, but I was sort of shocked to realize like how streamlined and boiled down the story is to just these really, really basic elements. It's very much like a you know, there are some like supernatural kind of things because the premise is these two girls move into a house with their family. The mom is sick. The dad is a professor, so he's not really. I mean, he's around, but he's not like spending all day with them. And they discover these I don't know, like forest spirits in the woods near their house, basically, and that's kind of it. Like there's not really much going on by way of plot, and it's very much like a day in the life of. Or a lot of the movie is sort of a day in the life following these two young sisters around, and I enjoyed spending time with them. I enjoyed, you know, obviously the animation is gorgeous and all of that stuff that you would expect for a Miyazaki property. But I was just sort of more blown away than anything else at just like how simple the story was, and I guess especially considering this came out in '88, and this was like. You know, it's around the time that movies like Little Mermaid are coming out and like stuff that I grew up watching, you know, on the American side of animation. And a lot of those movies are like so jam packed with like crazy conflicts and huge set pieces and like, I don't know, just a lot of stuff, for lack of a better word. And this movie is very much not that. So I think I'm glad that I came to it as an adult instead of seeing it as a kid for the first time, because I feel like as an adult, I have much more appreciation and patience, frankly, for a story like this. Whereas as a kid, I feel like knowing my younger self, I probably would have been too impatient to really appreciate this movie for what it's actually doing. So, yeah, My Neighbor Totoro, I really liked it.
Yeah, it almost has like a soul of like a Sundance movie or something, like especially with the human story in that.
Yeah, for sure. I also watched To Catch a Thief, which is a 1955 Alfred Hitchcock movie starring Cary Grant and Grace Kelly. I'd seen this movie when I was like 10 or 11 years old or something, and I didn't remember anything about it. It's got a really, really cool premise. It's about Cary Grant plays this guy who's a retired cat burglar named John the Cat Roby, and Grace Kelly plays this woman on the French Riviera who's like a tourist who has a bunch of money and tries to seduce him, basically. And there's somebody who's committing jewel heists using the same tactics that the cat used to use back in his day. And Cary Grant is supposedly retired, and the movie sort of plays for a little bit with the expectations of like, is he actually the one who's committing these crimes, or is there like a copycat jewel heister out there. So I'm not going to give that away in case anybody hasn't seen this movie and wants to see it. I'll just say I feel like the movie works a little bit better on paper than it does in practice. I think the exterior shots, like a lot of it was shot seemingly on the French Riviera, and like the exteriors are just gorgeous and really makes you want to take like a globe-trotting sort of vacation. And the chemistry between Grant and Grace Kelly is really great. But there's a lot of sort of puzzling editing choices and stuff like that in this movie. So I found it fine, but not like one of Hitchcock's best, even though I think it's maybe like one of the ones that comes up. Like I think it's probably like second tier Hitchcock in a lot of people's minds. So that's To Catch a Thief. Has anybody else here seen this? It seems like something, Jacob, you would have seen.
I did actually. I think I talked
cool.
about it on the water cooler episode a couple months ago, because I watched it for the first time, and I really liked it. But yes, it does kind of feel like second tier, or maybe like almost Hitchcock working out a couple of his ideas that he would perfect in later, better movies. Mm-hmm. But I do like the chemistry between Grace Kelly and Cary Grant.
Yeah, for sure.
And the next show you're going to talk about, I would also classify like one of those Discovery shows that I'm talking about, but this is a show I did like quite a bit.
Okay. Yeah. This is Killing Eve. So my wife and I watched the first episode of this. I think it's on Hulu right now, so that's where we watched it. And we only watched one episode because we just started the series last night, but I've heard so many good things about the show from, a bunch of people, and having just watched both seasons of Fleabag, we were both super impressed with Phoebe Waller-Bridge and what she was able to do as like a writer, creator, performer there. And I know that she wrote and sort of like oversaw the first season of Killing Eve. So we were excited to check this out. And I was a big fan of the first episode. It's like stylish, and it feels like there's a little bit of like sort of a globe-trotting action stuff in there as well. And I thought a little bit about Phoebe Waller-Bridge being brought on to write the next or contribute some to the next James Bond screenplay. After watching this, like, it's easy to see that the Bond people probably saw the first season of Killing Eve and thought that, okay, this is the person for us, because there's sort of a little bit of that vibe there, even though it's more like serial killers than British super spies. But it's really great. I mean, I haven't seen enough of it to like really get into it too much, but I would recommend it based on what I've seen and based on the million people that I've heard saying great things about it.
Yeah, and that jump from Fleabag to that is like totally different things. Like like you can be not that, like, it's so different. Mm-hmm. HT, what have you been up to? What have you been watching?
So the first thing I want to preface with, the series I actually wanted to talk about in the water cooler, I was not able to get to this weekend, and that's The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. I was really excited to see this series, but with my mom visiting, I could not persuade her to watch it with me. I tried my best, but she kind of just dropped out as soon as I said puppets. So I was really upset about that. I know.
Wait, what does your mom have against puppets?
She's like, I don't care. I don't really like puppets. And I was like, okay. Fine. She likes Henson, though, so she bought me my first copy of Labyrinth, so I don't know what she's talking about.
You shouldn't have even told her there's puppets. You should just pitch this like this fantasy.
There's weird non-humanoid creatures. But, well, it's okay, because we ended up watching a series that I have been wanting to get into for a while, and that's Mindhunter. And we only watched a couple episodes, but I was just so enthralled by this series that I ended up watching the entire season later on my own. Man, this show is so good. You guys were not lying. It's just so exceptionally well acted, well written, well shot, everything. And I wouldn't expect any less from a David Fincher series. But even after David Fincher's first 2 episodes, which he directed, I didn't feel a drop-off in the quality of direction at all. It was just top to bottom, just excellent all the way through. And I can't say enough about the performance too. Jonathan Groff is great. Anna Torv, who is kind of the reason I started watching this, because I absolutely love her work in Fringe, is also excellent, as is who is the supporting actor who I can't remember, and he's also excellent. But everyone in that show is great, and
You think
I
you have
can't
Colt
wait to watch it.
McCallany?
Yes,
Yes,
Holt
he's great.
McCallany.
Yeah.
He's so fantastic. But yeah, I just was really gripped by this series, and I am looking forward to watching the second season, which I hear is just as good as season one. Another thing I watched that I hadn't seen before, and I've been always wanting to get to, is the Blair Witch Project. This is a film that I never really got around to back when its hype was first at its peak. It came out in 1997 and 1999, sorry, 99. Y2K.
I'm very interested to hear your take on this film because it was such a product of its time, and there was not, there wasn't really like a big found footage film, and it was actually kind of marketed as if it was real, and some people believe that.
Yeah, I know all about that. I know like kind of everything, like the mythology around it and everything, and I'd heard about it, through pop culture sort of seepage. 1999, but I came out when I was 7, is what I was trying to say. So I kind of missed the boat on that whole thing. And it is still a really effective horror movie. It uses its ambiguity and the darkness and the power of suggestion so well that I just enjoyed it as not just a horror movie, but just as like almost a psychological thriller on the first part, because you don't really see much and there's very little gore, but a lot of it is just like that power of suggestion and that spiraling paranoia working so well in the context of the film. And yeah, the found footage I think really worked for me, despite it being aged very much to that time period. I just felt like it felt almost like a snapshot of 1999 at the same time as being just a great horror film on its own. And I think that like those two working together worked really well to sell the Blair Witch Project to me. So it was great. It really holds up.
What do you think of the ending?
I like the ending.
You like it?
Was it controversial?
Yeah, I mean, because I guess spoilers for Blair Witch Project coming up. But it like just ends. We see like a guy in the corner. Well, I don't know. Actually, now you have rewind. When you originally saw this in the theater in '99, you kind of weren't sure what you saw, and you either had to go back to the movie theater and see it again, or wait until it was on DVD and then be able to rewind it. So
yeah, I like that idea. I think that ambiguity and that like idea of just not really knowing what you watched really works for this film and really works as a storytelling device in general. So I liked it.
Anybody else have thoughts on the ending of the Blair Witch Project while we're on it?
The only way it could possibly end. I love it.
Yeah.
And I love that it pissed so many people off. But I guess nowadays we're used to found footage movies having that abrupt ending. It kind of created, the template for how these movies end. But it's such a bold move because that if we are going to find footage in the woods and put it in front of millions of people in theaters, you're not going to have an ending. You're not going to have that. You're not going to see the monster that kills everybody. And for better or worse, it's the best way you could have told that story in the style they were telling.
I don't know. I feel like if they were to make this film today, you'd have to see The Witch. Like, even like a glimpse of it before it goes out.
I don't think so. I mean, I think logistically it makes sense to just like the technical aspect or like the, the logic of the film itself, like that she would just drop the camera and you wouldn't see anything that happens on screen.
I mean, I like it. I like the ending. I'm more cynical in thinking that like you couldn't make this ending today.
Well, did you see Blair Witch, the newest one?
I did not.
Well, you get to see a lot of monsters in that one, constantly in your face screaming. And I like the movie quite a bit. I think it's a really fun roller coaster. But it's a roller coaster, whereas this one is just profoundly unsettling and not at all out to entertain you as much as it wants to get under your skin. So I would actually recommend Blair Witch, the new one. It is fun, but the old one is just this crazy masterpiece.
Well, you know what HT has to do next? She needs to watch Blair Witch Project Book of Shadows, which is one of Chris's favorites, right?
Chris likes it.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah, and many people do not like it. So I'm curious to see if HT thinks Chris is right on this one.
No, Jacob's right, because Book of Shadows is hot garbage.
I feel like Chris and I agree on a lot of things, but the one thing we will diverge on is horror movies.
Okay, what else have you been watching, HT?
I was also, speaking of Hitchcock, as Ben was talking about earlier, I saw The Man Who Knew Too Much, the 1934 original film that Hitchcock would later remake into a 1956 film of the same name, with James Stewart and Doris Day. So this original film starred Leslie Banks and Edna Best, and it was during Hitchcock's UK era of his films, before he broke out into Hollywood. And it also stars Peter Lorre, who is just phenomenal in this movie. I mean, he's, widely accepted as like one of the best. A great actor. I'm saying it really badly, but he's just fantastic in everything that he's been in. And watching him in The Man Who Knew Too Much was just a reminder of just how fantastic he is. He, in the few scenes that he's in the beginning, just strikes such a malicious presence, despite not really saying much and not really doing much, except for maybe like smoking a cigarette and having this strange white streak in his hair. But he's just over the top amazing. Anyways, The Man Who Knew Too Much is about a couple who are on vacation in Switzerland and who witness the shooting of their friend, and are sort of brought into a plot that their friend may be involved in. But as they are in possession of a vital piece of information, their daughter gets abducted, and they are threatened to have something horrible happen to their daughter if they tell the authorities anything about the information that they have. So it's a sort of grand spy plot that and sort of wrong man's kind of premise that Hitchcock loves to do, but in a sort of smaller, lower budget, as was the case with a lot of his British films. But despite that, he manages to craft these really big set pieces that feel much more epic and grand than they really are on screen. There is one sequence which I feel like was a definite influence on the Mission Impossible Rogue Nation Vienna opera sequence, in which the climax of the film takes place in an opera house when there is going to be an assassination attempt, and the shooting will happen at this big musical swell. So it's so well staged, and it's really fantastic, suspense that is built into the film. And I found myself, despite there being a lot of things that don't age well, such as the dialogue and some of the more clunky camera movements, it really works as a almost modern day thriller. So this is a film I recommend a lot. The Man Who Knew Too Much from 1934. I watched it on the Criterion Channel.
Okay, and you watched one other film?
Yes. I saw an early screening of Hustlers, which is going to be debuting. It's making its premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival this weekend. So I actually can't say much about it. It's directed by Lorraine Scafaria, and it's based on a viral New York Magazine article about former strip club employees who hustled their Wall Street clients and scammed them out of millions or thousands of dollars. It stars Jennifer Lopez, Constance Wu, Lily Reinhart, Cardi B, Lizzo, and I don't think I can say much before the TIFF premiere, but I will say that Jennifer Lopez is great in it, and it's quite funny, much more than anticipated. So check out my full reaction when the embargo breaks at TIFF this weekend.
Okay, let's move on to what we've been eating. By the way, I should say, guys, when you don't have me hosting the water cooler, last week I think you did it in like a half an hour or something. I don't know how you do it. Ben, how does that happen?
I have no idea.
Well, with me here, it happens in 3 times the length. Okay, what we've been eating, I've been eating very horribly. I have not even weighed myself, but I've definitely gained a lot of weight. I am going to be going back on a diet, my strict diet, after I return from this Florida trip. I feel really badly, and I am ashamed, Jacob. I'm ashamed because I'm seeing your progress, and I have taken 10 steps back here. I've just had
No,
so much travel.
You've taken one step back, Peter. Come on. Here's the most important thing to know here is that you did it before and you can do it again.
Yes.
Like honestly, I took last week off because it was my birthday and there was travel, so I ate a lot of junk food last week. I'm not proud of it. But I was back at it this week, and you'll be back at it next week when you get back from your trip, and you're going to lose it all, get back to where you were, and then make more steps, because that's how it is. You proved before in front of us all that you can do it. You can do it again. That's simple.
You know what's bad for this diet, Jacob, is running a theme park vlog channel because like people want to see you eating the cool food, which is bad for you. Speaking of bad for you food, Brad, what have you been eating or drinking this week?
Nothing too crazy except for just a new Mountain Dew flavor that came out fairly far in advance for what seems to be a Halloween themed flavor. It is Mountain Dew Voodoo, DEW, because of the Mountain Dew. And it's a mystery flavor. So they don't actually tell you what it is, and you have to take your best guess and try to figure it out. I don't know when they're going to announce what it is. My best guess is I know it's something tropical, kind of. It kind of tastes like maybe an orange creamsicle thing, which feels like it fits right in because there have been a lot of other orange creamsicle kind of flavored like snacks and sodas coming out recently. But then like I was thinking that maybe it could be something like a passion fruit or something like that as well. But then it also has like almost like just a general Skittles aftertaste. Like if you were to take just a handful of Skittles, not just a single one. So I really don't know. I guess there's a whole Reddit thread with people trying to guess. There's some really stupid guesses too that people seem to be serious about, not just trying to make jokes. And I don't know what's wrong with people's tongues. But yeah, I'm interested to see what the flavor actually is. I don't know if it's something that they're gonna have stick around more permanently.
Yeah, I had a friend try it, and they said Skittles is what they said. So I think maybe that's probably right. I don't know.
I don't know. It would seem weird to have a flavor just be Skittles.
I would. By the way, that makes me want to try this Mountain Dew Voodoo because I like Skittles. So
fair enough.
I'd like to taste.
Put some Skittles in a microwave, Peter. Just drink up.
Oh, gross.
Oh my God, nasty.
We've just found the vlogging channel that Brad is going to start, where he just microwave it. Microwave it.
I feel like there's already a YouTube channel for that.
But do the people actually eat it afterwards?
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is you have to microwave things to try and recreate the taste of other things.
Oh, God.
Good luck.
Okay, Ben, you teased this in the intro. What was the best thing you ate while you were on your trip?
Yeah, so in Portland, we went to this place called Pine State Biscuits, and the biscuits there are out of this freaking world. They are incredible. Specifically, we got two things. We got an item called the Reggie, which is a biscuit that has fried chicken, bacon, and cheese on it, and it's all topped in this sausage gravy, and it is like mouth-wateringly good. I'm so mad that I won't have it again unless I go back to Portland, because we stayed at a hotel that was like within just a few minutes walk of this place and had that for breakfast every morning we were there because it was so good. We had it the first morning and like had some other things in mind for like maybe we could do breakfast at these other places, and then that was just so good that it just drew us back every time. We also had just a regular biscuit there that had strawberry jam on the side, and the strawberry jam is so good, and you can really taste like the fluffiness of the biscuit if you just get that by itself instead of with the Reggie where it's sort of like drowned in all this other stuff. Both are delicious, and I would highly recommend them. And then really quickly, for either anybody who's in Portland or maybe going, I just want to run through a quick list of some of the places that we went where we got incredible food. So if you're looking for recommendations, here you go. A place called Pock Pock, Russell Street Barbecue, Stretch the Noodle, Blue Star Donuts, Multnomah Whiskey Library, Luce, and Hot Yai. So all of those places, top notch, definitely worth recommending.
You know, I have to derail this conversation yet again. I got to make this podcast longer, Ben. I'm curious because it sounds like you ate and drank a lot of good things. Like, how do you end up finding where you end up going when you go on these trips? Like,
So
do you
that
use
would
Yelp
be-
or?
That's my wife's domain for the most part. She does tons of research before we go anywhere to make sure that we have like amazing experiences. And yeah, it's a lot of Yelp stuff. It's a lot of searching through like local blogs and just best of lists and like lots of cross-referencing and some of it has to do with location too, like where we're staying, what areas of town we're going to be in. So we like to have a group of several different options in certain sections of every town that we go to, just in case we happen to be there during a meal. We have like a few places and we're not like stranded and have to just resort to some sad thing that we could get at any anywhere that we normally are.
It sounds like Amy, if she all of a sudden lost her job, she could have a career in travel planning.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's this whole thing like we were actually looking into that briefly at one point, not in any serious way, but there's a whole thing where like people will pay you to go and shoot their vacations, we make travel videos occasionally, and
wait,
like,
you videotape someone else's vacation?
Yeah, they pay for like your plane tickets and your lodging and all of that stuff, and for you to like do all the things with them. This is for like ultra rich people who just want to not worry about having to film themselves, and they just pay you as like a crew to like follow them around and create like an amazing travel video of their experience, but you get to sort of participate in it too. I mean, you're working because you have to shoot them, but you still get to do the stuff, and we're like, man, that sounds like a cool job. But then you're also like the level of people that you're probably dealing with at that point who have like that level of money, I have to imagine, I mean, this is painting with a very broad brush, but I have to imagine a lot of them are kind of dicks,
Yeah.
So it probably wouldn't be fun. And you'd probably be dealing with like really awful kids and, just a lot of entitlement. And I don't know if it would be worth the headache, but I'm sure somebody's out there has that job, and it's probably pretty cool.
Okay. I said HT was going to return. She has returned to talk about food. Yes.
Yes.
Tell us about all the foods, HT.
Yeah, my mom came, cooked for me, and it was great. So she made me this beef pho dish, which is like a very traditional beef pho dish. Usually I'm able to make a chicken pho one because it's slightly easier to do in the Instant Pot. And the beef pho I learned is a very intense process. She had to go to the butcher and get like beef bones to stew in the soup for a long time, and she had to get beef ribs as well, and it was a whole long process. It took more than a day to do, but the end result was delicious, and now I have lots of extra pho left over. I wish I had filmed the process actually, like on my Instagram, because that would have been a lot of fun, but I was just too excited to eat. But yeah, it was she made me a lot of things like that, and she also prepared for me something called char siu, which you might recognize as Chinese barbecue pork. In Vietnamese, we call it sa siu, and it's just like a pork that you often find in. Do you guys know the Vietnamese sandwich banh mi? You might hear it said as banh mi.
Yeah.
Yes,
Definitely.
That's the pork that you often find, and it has kind of like a red tint on the outside, and it's more white on the inside, and it's delicious. So she made like big cuts of that for me, and I'm going to be making probably some banh mi myself, as well as maybe some stir fry mien, like egg noodles to go with it, with some vegetables. So I'm all prepared. I'm just really excited about the meals I'm going to be making with this food. And I also learned how to make a childhood favorite recipe of mine, which I've been begging my mom to teach me for a while, and it's surprisingly easy. It's for this dish called thịt bò xào. It's basically a stir-fried beef dish, just a very simple marinade, like soy sauce and oyster sauce. And it makes this most delicious, sort of buttery, almost tasting stir-fried, really thinly sliced beef that you can eat either with French fries, as my mom used to make them, or healthily with green beans and rice. So I was able to make that the other day. I'm going to make it at some point again and put it on my Instagram story, because I know we've gotten some requests for me to actually talk about those recipes that I put on Instagram story. I will put that on my Insta story, and you guys can see me not burn down my kitchen as I make that dish.
Yeah, we need to see a vlog channel from you as well of HT Cook Stuff. That is what it should be called.
Yes, she cooks stuff and sweats and cries while she does it.
Okay, let's move on to what we've been playing. Jacob, what have you been playing this week? It looks like you had a game day.
I had many game days over Labor Day weekend with family and friends. A lot of games I've discussed before on the show, so I won't repeat those, but a few that I want to at least mention. Ones that were new to me. I want to start with King Domino. It's a very common, very simple game. You can find it at your local Target, but it's really brilliantly simple. It just takes the mechanics of dominoes, where you want to align the various pieces in order to, create the right matches. But in this case, you're trying to use these domino-esque pieces that where each area is a different territory of a kingdom, like a farmland or a body of water or a forest, and you have to try to match them up to form a 5x5 grid of squares. And there's a cool little bidding system where you can bid on which piece you want to grab next, and whoever goes last is stuck with something, but they make it to go first next time. And a game plays in literally 10 minutes. It takes 2 minutes to teach. It's a lot of fun. It's like $25. That's King Domino. Really good family game, really good warm-up game. A more complicated game, Silk. This is a fantasy farming game where you are a shepherd trying to tend to your flock of giant silkworms using your weird goat hound companion to herd them across the map. Meanwhile, there is a weird wolf monster trying to hunt them down. It's very, very cute art style. Everybody liked looking at it. It's just a fun game to have on the table. The gameplay itself is really tricky because you use your figures, your pieces, to literally shepherd things around. Like when you move your little dog piece into a square that has your worms or somebody else's worms, they get dispersed to another area. So it's a game of trying to get your worms where they need to be so they can munch on grass and give you silk, while trying to maneuver your opponent's worms out of where they want to be. So it can be a very nice game where everybody kind of gets along, or a very mean game where you're all about trying to push everybody out. I've played it both ways, and both ways were very fun. That's Silk. A little bit more complex, Bargain Quest. It's a game that was originally only available last year through the designer's website. Now it's more widely available. I found it at a few game shops. And the gist is that you live in a town overrun by monsters and marauders, and a group of heroes have arrived to get rid of the monsters and save the day. And you are all the local shopkeepers, and your job is to make as much money as possible from the heroes. So when they arrive in town, they come with a certain amount of money, and you can play the game two ways. You can play the game by selling them actually good stuff and actually looking at the table and what monsters are there and equipping them as best you can and winning points each and getting people knowing your shop supplied the heroes, or you can try to fleece them for as much money as they're worth and win through profit, but possibly send them into situations where they'll most definitely die.
Wow, this is the most capitalist fantasy game I've ever heard of. This is the most 2019 game ever, too. Yeah.
But it's a blast. It is a little more complicated. A few people at my table didn't really understand the strategies until the back half of the game, and by then it was too late. But it was a very, very fun game. That's Bargain Quest. Now I'm going to talk about an old favorite. I've been playing it for a few years now, and that's Scythe. It is a massive, complex game. It takes a half hour to teach. It took us 4 hours to play. I love games at the table, but it's a beast. And it's set in 1920s. Set in alternate universe, 1920s Eastern Europe, full of mechs powered by steam and crazy sci-fi concepts, while still being distinctly 1920s. And it's a game it's really a Cold War game. You can get in the fight, but you need to pick your fights carefully because you're trying to control this territory. You always are rival nations, but you also need to produce goods. You need to produce, things like iron and food and wood, and you need to build civilizations. You need to make sure you're popular. You need to make sure that people like you. You need to make sure your military power stays high. It's all about balancing these various tracks and trying to maximize each turn so that you're getting the most out of your money and time. And it's also a really cool game where you get mechs to fight each other across the countryside of alternate 20s Eastern Europe. Peter, I know you're a big Scythe fan. I know it's very popular online. There's a really good digital version out there, too, if you want to play it on PC. But it's a gorgeous-looking game, and every time it's on my table, people are just wowed looking at it, and they play it, and they're really, really frustrated at it because it's very hard. But when it's over, everybody's really happy and wants to play again.
See, it's a complicated game, so it's hard to get people to play it. I wish there was an iPad version of that digital version you mentioned on the PC. Like, if there was an iPad version, I could get a lot more plays out of it, I think.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they have not moved it to a tablet or an iPhone yet, but it's... I don't know. Maybe there's just too many moving pieces for a smaller screen. I don't know.
Yeah.
Jacob, I'm curious about. So I know you have tons of board games, like endless amounts of board games, and when it comes to the more complicated ones, Do you sit down by yourself first and read through all the rules so that way when you have people over, you can easily and quickly explain it to them? Or do you all just learn it together, like for the first time when you open it?
Always the former. I will always learn a game first. I will not bring a game to the table if I can't teach it right then and there.
Gotcha.
I feel like just stumbling over rules with people takes a long time, and it leaves everyone at the table getting frustrated. So I always learn it first.
Is it hard to do it when if like you come across something that you didn't when you were learning the rules, like certain situations where you have to go look up like the rules for a specific scenario or anything like that?
Oh, that happens. That's when you pull open the rule book, and since you read it before, you hopefully know where to look. Because you're familiar with the layout of the book, you're familiar with the
How big
layout
are these
of it
rule
all.
books, by the way?
They can
for
be
example,
big.
A game like King Domino is 3 pages. Then Scythe is like 50 pages.
Oh, God.
And then there's Twilight Imperium, which is a game that I played. I play about once a year, maybe twice a year, and that's a 80-page rule book. At least the third edition was.
We should say that Psy is not even that complicated of a game in board game terms, but it's complicated enough that it comes with suggested starting turns for your first 5 turns or something.
Yeah. If you were like completely drawing a blank, there's a little help hint card that says, "Hey, on this turn, try this," which it's actually really useful. But like I said, then again, there's other games like this, the Diplomacy. It's a very famous old game. The rulebook's only 12 pages long, but game takes 8 hours to play. So rulebook doesn't necessarily always align to complexity or running, but they run the gamut. It could be a game that literally is a single page front and back for rules, and then there are games that are novel. You got to take hours to learn them. And I love them both. Damn it.
Do you read the rule books, or I usually will go to YouTube and there's a bunch of sites out there like Rodney's How to Play and
Watch It Played, you mean?
Watch It Played, yeah, sorry.
Watch It Played is really good. I also like Rado Runs Through are 2 really good ones, but they don't cover everything. And if Rodney has a video, you probably don't need the rule book because he's the absolute best at teaching rules. That's Watch It Played on YouTube. But he's only one man. He only covers so many games. So I always, I am the token rulebook guy of my group. It's my duty. I learn the games and I teach them.
See, that's what I was about to ask, is if there was a YouTube channel, because one of the things that I've liked is when I go to visit some of my friends who live near Lafayette in Indiana, where I went to college at Purdue, they have a game cafe there where you can go and you pay $5 and you can sit around all day, and they have tons of board games, and you can play whichever ones you want to with your friends. And what I like about it is they have people there who know how to play all the games. So they'll come over, and you'll be like, we want to play a game that's, kind of like this. So, and they're like, oh, well, here, and they'll bring some options over, and then they explain, the basic rules and, get you set up on how to play. And it makes it so much easier to dive into a game that otherwise might take us forever to figure out how to play. And I feel like it makes the experience that much more enjoyable, too.
Yeah, if you go to a gaming cafe and they have the opportunity, they have somebody curate your night for you, and somebody say hey, we want a game like this, and they'll teach it for you. It can be really, really fun because the people who work those cafes tend to really know games and really know how to read your table and suggest something.
Yeah, if someone knows how to play a game, I feel like you can get into the game in less than 10 minutes, as opposed to if you sat down to learn that with a group of friends, not having read the rule book or watched a video, it could take you an hour and a half before you're on your first turn. So
yeah, we were suggested one time Betrayal at Hill House,
or House in the Hill. I'm sorry.
House in the Hill.
I'll be that guy.
But no, that's a game that I probably never would have picked up to try, because it does look kind of complex and complicated. But having someone start us off on it and explain to us, how to play it and get us going on our first round made it that much easier. And it's a game that I now own.
Yeah, and it should also be noted that there's a great website called Board Game Geek, which is kind of like the IMDb for board games. It has a huge community around it. So if you're ever in a board game, and you're stuck on some kind of rule, if you do a search and you include BGG at the end of your search, about a certain card or something, there's definitely a forum thread on Board Game Geek explaining, the answer to your question, because it's that kind of community. That saved me so many times. Okay. Anyways, lastly, in what we've been playing, I wanted to talk about something stupid that I've decided to do. I was at Galaxy's Edge, as I often am, and we're vlogging, and I came up with the idea that I'm gonna do what I'm calling the Black Kyber Crystal Challenge. I'll put a link in the show notes to this video if you want to watch it, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. In Galaxy's Edge, when you build your lightsaber, as Brad did when he was in Galaxy's Edge, you get to pick your own Kyber Crystal. The Kyber Crystal comes in a variety of colors. The crystal changes the color of the blade and is also associated with the Jedi or Sith. Brad, what color did you pick?
I went with red.
Red. I picked green, and that's because Brad's evil. One of the interesting things is you can buy more Kyber crystals than Doc Ondars, and if you buy a red Kyber crystal, I'm not sure what the odds are. The thing that's going around online is 1 in 100. There's a 1 in 100 chance that you could get a black Kyber crystal. So the black Kyber crystal is like these Kyber crystals come in this packaging. You can't see through the packaging. There was a way to hack this by shining your iPhone flashlight through the packaging and seeing if there's a black Kyber crystal in there. They have since moved the Kyber crystals behind the counter, and they've since, in the latest manufacturing of these Kyber crystals, installed a piece of paper that makes it impossible to shine your light through the Kyber crystal. Anyways, this is a long way of saying that a Kyber crystal is a very elusive, limited thing that is hard to find. They sell for upwards of $2,000 on eBay. It's very hard to get. It's expensive to get. I've decided I own a lot of things from Galaxy's Edge, guys, and I want a black Kyber crystal, and I go to Galaxy's Edge almost weekly for these vlogs. So I'm doing this thing in my vlogs that every time I'm at Galaxy's Edge, I'm going to buy a red Kyber crystal, hoping to one day get a black in there. And I'm curious how long it will take me, how much money it'll cost me, and how many how long it'll take me to actually obtain this black Kyber crystal. So you can watch a video about that. I'll link it in the show notes. Jacob, am I stupid?
In a word, yes, but in 2 words, no, because I support this kind of behavior.
What are you gonna do with all of the red Kyber crystals that aren't black Kyber crystals?
See, that's also weird because I was originally I was thinking of selling them on eBay just for like the price I paid, but Disney has recently cracked down on eBay, on people selling stuff on eBay, and one of my friends actually got her annual pass taken away from her because she sold a coaster from Oga's Cantina, which she got for free on eBay for $5 or something.
Wait, how do they know who these people are and like where they're getting them from and stuff?
That's I don't know. I'm not even sure. I'm guessing that they are actually, because there was no information on who the person was, I'm guessing that Disneyland is actually buying stuff and, penalizing annual pass holders. I don't know. Anyways, it makes me scared to sell stuff on eBay that I bought at Disneyland because I don't want to be seen as a flipper or scalper or whatever. So I don't know what I'm going to do with these. I might, at the end of this, maybe I'll do a contest. And I'll be giving away red Kyber crystals on the YouTube channel.
You could sell, like, raffle tickets.
Well, I think Disney would look down upon that, too. I don't know.
I
don't think I'm going to make my money back. I think this is just a total loss. It's just a question of how much...
You're going to lose a lot of money.
How much money am I going to spend is the question. I mean...
Your reward is in the joy of experiencing this challenge, Peter.
Money
is no object.
I have one person I know that went to Galaxy's Edge on their first visit, randomly bought a red Kyber crystal and got a black. So it does happen. It doesn't mean that it might not mean that I'm going to actually buy hundreds of Kyber crystals, but
Peter, here's an idea. Instead of doing this Kyber crystal challenge, just each week you go back to Galaxy's Edge, give one of us $15 or $20, however much it costs for a Kyber crystal, and we'll just tell you, nope, it's not a black one, and it'll be the same experience.
Yeah. To make matters worse, this is going to make you think even less of me. The black Kyber, all these Kyber crystals are tied to a spirit of a Jedi or Sith. The black Kyber crystal is tied to Snoke. So it's not even like it's a cool person it's tied to, but I still want it because Snoke has a black ring that I guess is apparently a Kyber crystal. That's why. So, anyways, watch that video online and follow my adventures because every time I go to Galaxy's Edge, I'm going to spend another $12 to see if I can roll the dice and, get one of those black Kybers. So, you can find all of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast published every weekday on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends. Spread the word. And we will see you tomorrow.
Hey, Peter.
Yes, Jacob?
I've opened the book.
Yeah. Which book? The Disneyland book?
No, it's either the gargantuan book of insult, offense, and effrontery. Sharp retorts, ripostes, caustic quips, and impolite put-downs.
Wait, can we switch?
Sapien.
Can we switch to the Disneyland book and then each week learn some facts about Walt Disney and the people who made Disneyland?
We need to finish this book first, Peter.
How many more entries do we have?
I'm assuming a couple thousand. All right. Well, I have opened it up to the Fallen Angels section, which is section that's very, very sexist. So I apologize to everybody in the world before we begin. I will be changing the pronouns appropriately. Peter, he started his sex education with a book titled "What Every Guy Should Know." It wasn't too long before he was reading "The Care and Feeding of Infants."
I'm not sure I get this one.
Well, for Brad, all the girls have to do is put 2 and 2 together, and they have his number.
Okay.
Wait, his number's 4?
Ben, he runs a gamut of emotions from yes to yes.
Heyo.
Wow, these are very profoundly sexist.
Yeah.
Well, HT, the only thing you ever gives is in.
Ooh.
Wow.
Oh.
Ooh.
Yeah, this was a bad
we got to contact the HR department of Slash Film right now.
All right, well, I'm gonna open another page. I need to. Oh yeah. As a speaker, Peter's like a ship. He toots loudest when in a fog.
Oh no.
I mean.
Well, yeah. This. Okay. This was.
Even Jacob
has finally gotten stumped.
Even Jacob has come to us.
Oh, okay, this is enough.
Well, I'm a sound speaker. Oh, those sounds.
No.
See, guys, buying kyber crystals does not sound like a bad idea after reading jokes from this book.
You know, this book cost me $4.99 years ago, Peter. And each one
How
of these,
many years ago?
maybe 3 or 4. It's been sitting on my shelf, waiting for its time.
Its time still has not arrived.